Welcome to the BG Perform podcast, influencing the highest standard of coaching, one episode at a time.
This is the show for coaches, athletes, and high performers who demand more from their training, their clients, and themselves.
Whether you're coaching elite competitors or everyday people, you'll get raw insights that raise the bar so you can influence the highest standard of coaching in your world. DM myself at BGPerform_ and at Coach Jerry Hayes to work together or learn from the best. This show is part of the Coach RX Podcast Network, a collection of shows designed to elevate the coaching conversation. Find the link in the description below. Now sit back and enjoy our new episode. Let's go. Welcome back to the BG Perform podcast with my co-host, Coach Jerry Hayes.
What's up?
We are back with another episode of season 1 of the new season of the BG Perform podcast. If you forgot, I got this sick ass mic that sounds really good. It's like the late night shit. What's it called? The Chris.
You see what makes it so special? What's great about it?
Years ago they tried to put me in
this live.
This live.
Yeah, it's
The late night TV host.
Like, this sounds so good, but you stuttered over the
late night TV host,
thing.
Chris Voss. If you haven't listened to, I'm just fixing my camera quick. If you haven't listened to Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss or ever read that book, he talks about in negotiation, there's like a couple different voice tones that you use. And one of them is downward inflection, which is the late night TV host. And he goes, "My name's Brandon Gallagher. Tonight, you're going to be listening to the BG Perform podcast."
I think I'm pregnant after that, dude. That's crazy.
Oh, that's funny. But welcome back. We are on episode 2. Today, we're going to be talking about how to be a great coach in 2025 and beyond. I think there's so many things going on in the world. And I think that every day I'm hearing more about AI taking our jobs and taking our careers. And, I think that to be a great coach, you have to become one with AI. Yes.
See, I think that the Terminator is going to happen, and we're all screwed.
Maybe.
Because Arnold's going to be chasing after everyone.
Maybe. But outside the point, because that's obviously obvious, learn how to use it. There's a lot of things that we want to talk about in regards to how you can be a great coach in 2025 and beyond. Because I think no matter what, I really do believe that while fitness can be, I guess, utilized by AI, and I think utilized in a lot of ways, and can maybe I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but I guess you can get good workouts from AI, right? But I think in a lot of these fields, especially what we do in fitness, it's more about being there as a coach, having the eyes, the accountability, the connection. And I think later on in life, very soon, like, people are going to miss that type of connection. I think AI is going to have a really big impact. It already has, but I think in a lot of ways it's going to kind of take our jobs, and people are going to miss human connection. But that wasn't really the point of this whole thing. It just kind of came to my head. But today, as we dive into this,
it's a good point to take note of.
Yeah, and I think main conversation we want to have today is what does make a great coach in 2025, and then obviously and beyond 2025, right? And I think me and Jerry, we sat down and we were kind of diving into what we thought, made up this idea, because I think there's a lot of things that go into coaching. And today is actually, we launched the Coach Connect today, which was our first in-person meeting for a project that I've been working on with a coach here local in Albany, because Jerry's not local. But we were working on that for the last few months, and we launched that today. And
over here,
and one of the main talking points of the day was the standard of fitness, right? Or standard of coaching. And I think for me, the standard of coaching needs to be kept at the forefront for everything that we do. moving forward inside of coaching. And I think with that, what tends to happen here is with understanding the highest standard of coaching, like with that being the North Star, there's things that we need to talk. Of course, I'm going to get a text. Sorry, can you hear the binging?
Shit on silence. Yeah.
How do I ping it? How do I put it on silent?
Oh, is that your computer?
Yeah,
Just put it on Do Not Disturb.
true.
Put it on Do Not Disturb.
Do not disturb. So when we talk about being a great coach, there's so many different aspects that go into it. And for us, it's like, I've talked about this before. It's the motto of BG Perform. It's influencing the highest standard of coaching. And that is what we do, right? And I think that when me and Jerry sat down today, this was obviously stuff that we think, yeah, right now, like tomorrow, you could take into your coaching and do well, right? But, in the next 10 years, when things will change, and I really do believe things are going to change like very rapidly, very quickly, what can we do to make sure that we're at the forefront and have those skills to manage these things accordingly, right? Is there anything you want to add to that?
I think you jokingly with the AI, you actually made a really good point where the connection of everything is what matters the most. And I think like having somebody who understands what it's like to be human is what makes the difference in a lot of these factors that we're going to talk about today. So not just like, here's what you're doing, do it. I think understanding that humans have flaws and there's things that we need to work on. That's a huge point of a lot of what you'll see us talk about today. So I'll just throw that in.
Yeah.
So I think starting with AI was actually a good starting point.
Yeah. And I think the first conversation obviously comes to like professionalism, right? And I think if we actually dive into what coaching is, it's to me, it's first off taking yourself and committing to it as a career, right? And I think it's to me that's like the biggest thing is actually waking up in the morning and understanding that like coaching is my career and it's what I want to do every single day and dedicating yourself to the craft. And I had this conversation earlier and I've had this conversation a bunch of times, but it's like when we look at coaches or when we look at like lawyers and doctors, right? We don't go into these conversations and say, "Oh, let me get a free session," or can you look at this and maybe if I like it, I'll pay you, right? And I think that's something that I see way too much inside of fitness, where we're looked at as like these, kind of like gig workers type thing. And I believe that a lot of us have put so much time and effort into what we do that we need to allow ourselves to be held to that standard as well. And it's not just something that we need to think about, what we actually need to act on, right? And I think a lot of that starts with professionalism. A lot of that starts with literally just the concept of waking up and saying, I want to make my coaching my career and not just a job.
That's perfect, because the making it your job and not just a hobby, that's where a lot of that problem comes from. When people think you're just doing them a favor, like, oh, I have a buddy who likes to do that. He likes to train people for fun. Hey, can you do me a favor and do that for me? And it's like, no, this is my job. Like, I'm putting everything I have into it. It's not just like my friend wants to go to the gym and hey, look, it works with my schedule. I'll go train him today. This is something where it's, like you said, you're committing everything you have to it. You're making it your job. It's not a hobby. You're not doing anybody favors. Obviously, you're helping people, but this is something that we're giving the best that we have, and the best that we have is built on years of education and experience, and not just waking up and going to the gym because.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about this stuff, like Jerry said, there's a lot of people who know how to work out, right? And I think there's a lot of people who can navigate the gym, being honest. Like, it's really like, and it's not to like downplay what we do, because I think we have a very important job. But if you take your time in the gym for 3 months, 90% of the people that walk in there are going to be fine, and they're going to understand it, and they're going to be able to do what they need to do. But like, as coaches, we're there to, again, take someone to that next level, right? We're not there to just, obviously we're there to get someone to know the gym and understand it and feel comfortable, but we're also there to take those people who want the next step, or want to perform better, or lift more, or just look their best, like whatever it might be. Like, we're there to do that job for them in regards to fitness, right? And I think that if we talk about this in a couple different ways. I think one of the main ways is obviously being on time, right? And I think when we talk about coaching in general, I can't tell you how many times I've seen people just show up when they want. They're not early. They're not ready. They're just kind of there when they need to be there, and then they leave when the session's over. There's no, commitment to it. Like I remember I said this before, but I've seen people who were training professional athletes. I'm not going to say the guy's name because then I would talk for 30 minutes on
Do it. Do it. Do it.
but he was a younger guy that I used to work with, and he would show up maybe 5 minutes before the session. And if he was early, whatever, but he didn't have workouts planned. He would just come in and write them on the board and just kind of look around the gym and be like, oh, well, maybe this will work, and maybe this will work, and maybe this will work. And I was just like, I was like, what are we doing here? Because like you're training people who's are depending on you for their career, and you don't even have the decency to think ahead of time, like, hey, what might I want to do today? Right? Maybe
That's
he
the
did.
scary part, because it was a professional athlete. Like, it's bad enough to do it to somebody in general population, but to take a professional athlete whose career and like living is dependent on their performance, that's wild.
Now I want to be clear. Like, obviously, having a workout and changing a workout in the session or before the session, that's completely different, right?
Adapting to it.
Adapting, right? Like this guy just came in and was like, all right, let's think what we're going to do today. And that's not how we run programs, right? That's not how you run a program. That's not how you get success. That's not how you give someone the best experience, because I've had sessions like that when I was younger and I was just starting and I didn't plan a session. And it's miserable because you go into the session and you're like, all right, well, I wanted to do this, but like I just kind of thought about it quick and it doesn't really make sense, or I forgot about their knee pain, or I forgot about, and it doesn't feel good to have to run a session like that. And like when you have to start running sessions where you have to think about the movements and what you chose as opposed to actually watching the person in front of you and communicating and building a relationship, that's when coaching sucks, right? And that's part of the biggest, like outside of just obviously writing programs ahead of time to, I would say prepare for it, right? And give them the best results, is just to not have to think about it. If you have to go into a session and you're thinking about what's next on a movement, or how many reps should we be doing, or how many sets are we doing, then you miss out on all the other parts of training, which are, hey, how was your day? How are you feeling? How did that set feel? That didn't look great. Let me cue this, because you're like, all right, well, they're moving, maybe we'll do one more set. Maybe it looks kind of light. Like maybe we'll do 8 reps. I don't remember what we did last week, and maybe we should bump the weight up a little. Like all these things are going through your head as a coach if you don't prepare, and the client is losing all the value of a session like that. So as coaches, the timeliness on top of obviously like the I guess kind of one of the notes we wrote was like legit business practices, and maybe there's like more details into that, but like having an actual session planned and being on time are just two of the most basic things as a trainer you can do, right? And I think like Ian used to say this a lot, was like his job is to train and make weight, and that's what he needs to do, right? He needs to be there to fight and he needs to make weight. Those are his job. That's what he gets paid for. Us, we need to show up on time and have something planned, right? Like that is part of our job, and that's what we get paid to do on top of all the other things. But those are two of the most important in regards to professionalism that I think I can name right off the bat. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, not only that, like not only just having a plan, but having a plan that's like you have a plan to progress on what you're doing, and everything is like comprehensive. Everything is built on what you've done in the past, what you plan to do in the future. It's not just like, yeah, today we're going to do this. I have a plan. It's a lot of thought that goes into the programming. If you're just kind of putting a program together and be like, yeah, this will do, that's not going to do. Especially for somebody who is in a position like Ian or some of the other professional athletes, like it's not something you just put together a quick workout the day before and say like, all right, plan's here. It's something that you put serious thought into. You think about that client's specific injury history, movement, patterns that they struggle with, everything that goes into a good session, especially knowing what their schedule's like, what their fatigue might be like. All these things go into a legitimate business practice.
Yeah, and I think like you said, there's so many other aspects of it. And like, I you can't be a coach and want to train professionals, and I'll say that broadly because obviously athletes, but professionals too. Like if you want to make money and you want to build a business or you want to be surrounded by clients who actually care, you have to care first, right? And I think that's another thing that a lot of these coaches who aren't successful early on is they just don't care about those little details, right? And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of coaches who care a lot who just, either don't have the right business setup or marketing or whatever it might be. But there's also a very big chunk of coaches who aren't getting clients because they're just not professionals, right? They're not true professionals, right? And so so far we've talked about time, we've talked about like legit business practices, and we talked about treating it as a career and not just a job, right? But there's two other things that I think are like huge inside of coaching. And I think it's pricing and I guess pricing and contract, and then really understanding, right? And I think when we talk about pricing, the fitness industry, me and Jerry have had this conversation on here a couple times now, but it's just like they can be such snakes, right? And I think that like one of the most refreshing things that people can see is just a price that is upfront, makes sense, has clear guidelines. What's the cancellation policy? What is just the SOPs, right? The standard operating procedures. What are those things? How do they work? What am I expecting? What is the client expecting of me? And how does that work? Because if you give those expectations up front and you lay the kind of like draw the line on what is going to work and what's not going to work, it's going to be such a better experience for you and the client. And that's something that I missed out on early on in my career, where I was just like, I didn't want to throw things out there because I was nervous people wouldn't want to train with me, or they were going to say no, or if I demanded too much, it wasn't going to work out. And as of more recently, like in the last 3-4 years, I was like, no, like I need to live a life with this, right? And if I want to build a life and I want to build a career, they need to know what the price is. They need to know what the contract is. They need to know what happens if they miss a session, if they want to cancel, if they want to, add on more or take some away. Like there's got to be procedures there, right? And if you want to run a business properly and not have the stress of the business, like set this stuff up. So when people come in, they walk in, they know what to expect, they know what they're getting. There's no kind of foggy gray area where it's like, oh, well, I paid X amount and it said I was supposed to get, Y, or you said I was supposed to get Y. I paid you 500 and you said I was going to get 8 sessions and now you're telling me it's only 6. And it's like, I never said that. I only said 6. And then you kind of have this back and forth when it's like, no, here's the contract. Here's what you signed. Here's what you committed to, right? Like these are all very important things inside of our career that make us professionals, right? And also, again, coming back to that programming aspect is like, it takes our mind off of all those little details and allows us to really just focus on coaching as a whole and doing our best as a coach.
Yeah, I think upfront pricing and contract it falls under the umbrella of the legitimate business practice. And there are a million circumstances where someone might not understand the contract that they're signing. So making sure that they truly understand what they're signing, even though they're signing it, it doesn't mean they understand. So just up front, as they're signing, be like, all right, this is the part that says this. This is the part that says cancellation policy and that this and this. And as they're signing it, you're explaining it to them, because God knows nobody reads what they sign ever. So you're not only helping them by being honest, but you're also protecting yourself, because you could say like, yep, this is what it says. And if they say like, oh, well, you never told me that, and you just say, well, you signed it.
Yeah. That
doesn't really sound too good. And again, there are a million reasons why someone might not, maybe they're not all there mentally and they truly don't understand. I know that because one of those reasons, I've worked at a gym where I've seen people I haven't seen them sell it, but I know that they sold personal training packages to somebody who was not fully there. They had dementia, sold them a package anyway. Oh man, corporate got a hell of an email from me. I was livid. And they didn't honor anything. They sent them to collections, which is the worst thing in the world.
That's crazy.
So yeah, I'm just waiting for the day that company just fucking.
Damn.
But anyway, on a happier note, be on top of your things and make sure you're taking care of them and they understand what you're selling them just as much as you understand in that contract.
Yeah, and I think like again, this is something that doesn't matter if it's AI, it doesn't matter if it's you. This works, and you need this, right? That you need to be a professional, and you need to kind of consider these things regardless of the situation or where we're at technology-wise, right? I think one of the other things, kind of moving on to a different aspect of it, is, understanding that you like, if you want to be a great coach, right? And if you're a client or someone who works out and is looking for a great coach, there's a couple kind of like things that I think we wrote, but I think they kind of fall into the same thing here, right? Like, I think if you're walking into somebody and they have some ridiculous timeline about what you're going to get and when you're going to get it, I think obviously you can make a lot of changes in a very short time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're being sold absurd dreams, like, it's fun. Have you ever seen those memes where it's like the one guy is like a fat white guy with glasses, and then like the next picture is like a huge jacked black guy, and he's like in 30 days.
I've seen those. Yeah.
Like that type of thing where it's like, obviously no one's promising that, but those are hilarious.
Yeah.
But like, you want someone who's going to be upfront with you. You want someone who cares about you and your goals, but also isn't just trying to like sell you, right? You want someone who's like, hey, listen, like, obviously I would love to work like this. This is something I talk about a lot with my clients, because I think that sometimes, obviously as a coach, I want to work with people as much as I can to make the most amount of change, but there's other things that are involved, whether it's money, whether it's time, whatever. And I let them know, I'm like, listen, if you can make it in 3 times a week, it's better. Obviously it's better.
Sure.
We're going to have more time. You're going to have more intentional workouts, that type of thing. But if you can make it in twice, that's good too. Right.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is obviously you get an extra day. There's an extra time with me. There's more that we can work on, that type of thing. But if you can only do 2, that's fine. Right. And obviously there's a pretty big price difference between 2 and 3 days in a week, but it's not forcing it. It's not pushing it. It's just understanding that, like, whatever it might be. Right. And also understanding like, hey, I have a timeline in a way that I work. For most people that I work with, I ask them for at least 3 months of their time. Doesn't mean they have to pay up front, but I ask for 3 months because nothing really is going to work if you don't give it at least 3 months, right? It doesn't matter really what you do. You can see changes and feel changes in about a month, but if you want the full benefits of something, you're going to have to give it at minimum 3 months, if not 6 for most, right? Because 3 months is like a perfect scenario, which means there's no hiccups, there's no mess ups, you're eating perfectly, you sleep perfect every single night, like that type of thing. But if you can at least get 3 months out of somebody, you can at the bare minimum change their habits. And if you change their habits, then in the long term, you're going to get a lot of long-term results, right? But I think that like the timelines, the honesty, and like being real, even if it's not flashy or going to help you with the sale, right? Like it might be, hey, listen, I can help you, but like there's so many other things we have to work on that I don't know if I'm going to be able to get you to 30 pounds in, say 3 months. I think we can if you stick with it, but there's a lot of things that are in the way. There's a lot of red flags that I'm seeing that might stop us from getting there. And if that's the case, we have to work on those first, which is going to kind of hinder us or slow us down a little bit at the beginning, right? And I'd much rather hear that than have someone be like, oh yeah, no, like, don't worry about it. We're gonna get you those 60 pounds in 3 months. Just sign right here. Because I think like people get in what we do, it's a very sensitive topic. It's a very close to the heart type of thing where it's like, I want to lose weight because I want to feel better about myself. I want to like the way I look. I want to love myself. I want to perform better. I want whatever it might be. And you get someone in front of you kind of promising you the world, and you're like, all right, cool, I'll do it. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's just, you have to be careful about these things. And you, again, it doesn't mean that if someone's promising you something, it doesn't mean that it's not going to work. Right. Like it's still going to work. But the biggest thing that I want you to understand is like, be realistic too. Right. Like if someone's coming to you and saying like, they're going to give you X amount results in whatever type of day or whatever type of time, again, doesn't mean it's not going to work. It's just be cautious, take a step back and be like, okay, like, do I feel like I can trust them? Are there people in there that I know? Are there people that I see that are similar to me? Right. And if there's not, take a step back and just see how you feel. Right. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think there's a confidence piece that comes into that for coaches specifically. And I know that I've been in the position where as a new coach, I'm like, I really want to get these clients and like, I really want to instill the confidence in them, but I want to be confident myself. And that was a moment where like I've had this conversation with multiple people, but most recently, for an example, like you have to have the confidence to tell somebody if their expectations them, like as a coach, if the client or potential client's expectations are a little outlandish. And what I mean by that is, most recent conversation during a consultation, I was sitting down with a woman and she said, "This is what I want to look like." Insert guy talking about Brad Pitt Fight Club, right? Like, this is what I want to look like the classic super lean, super fit looking person. And it's important to know, like, you can want an idea of what to look like, but it doesn't mean you're always going to look like that person. So right off the gate, she showed me this person, very different build, very different frame. Like, structurally, her bones were different frame. So I had to be honest with her. I'm not going to say, like, yeah, you can look like that for sure. Because then when she doesn't get that, you know what she's going to do? She's going to get upset and she's going to cancel. Mm-hmm. So it's important to give them real expectations. So what I said was, I love that. It's important to know that everybody is built differently. Your frame and her frame are actually a little bit different. You may not look just like that, but we're going to make you look like the best version of you. And that is everything. Because immediately she was like, oh, okay, I see that. But if I was like, yeah, we can make you look just like that, then she's going to expect to look just like that. Mm-hmm. A couple months down the line, when she doesn't, you just lost yourself a client because you're lying through your teeth.
Yeah, so exactly.
Honesty and confidence as a coach is everything.
Yeah, and I think along with that, like, one of the biggest things too is, because I think what goes along with kind of being lied to is also someone who avoids things, right? Or doesn't tell the truth or doesn't explain. Because I think a lot of the times people ask the right questions, but I think a lot of the times they don't force the right answers, right? If you ask a question about some, you know, you're talking to somebody, you're like, hey, I want to lose weight, blah, blah, blah. And someone just starts diving in with these words that are going over your head and telling you all these methods and ways to do it and all this and that. And you're just kind of so overwhelmed that you don't even know what to ask, right? That is a problem, because that is kind of putting it in a perspective of not that I can help you, but like, you need me to do this, right? Like, this is so complex that, like, if you don't pay me, this isn't going to work for you, right? And most of the time that might be the case. Like, and it's just straight up. It's like, you just don't have the tools, or you don't have the accountability or the discipline or whatever it might be. You just don't have it, right? And that's why you're looking for a coach. But I also think it's really important for the person in front of you to sit down and take the time to explain, like, hey, I'm going to explain this to you in the science-y kind of way because I want you to understand it. But in layman's terms, here's what this means, right? We're going to take away some calories. We're going to increase our exercise activity through the week. We're going to also increase our steps throughout the week, which is going to increase overall activity, which is going to help us burn X amount more calories, depending on your body weight and height and all that. And then with the food, what's going to happen is we're going to basically put ourselves in a position where we're slowly taking away as the activity goes up, right? And that's just how this is going to work, right? And that might look a lot more like thermoregulation or digestion or consuming calories and macronutrients and micronutrients. And someone might be like, I don't know what you're saying, right? So it's really important that you find someone who sits down and takes the time and is like, hey, listen, here's what we're going to do. Here's kind of where my head's at. Here's how I can explain it to you so hopefully you understand, and allowing them to ask more questions, because you might explain it even further and they still might not understand, right? So it's our job to just take the time to explain these complex topics, create a way to understand it, and allow them the time to digest it. No pun intended, but digest it and come back with and come back with real questions that can, you know, advance the conversations and get them into a spot where they feel comfortable enough to continue with you.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Cool. So I think so far we talked about professionalism. We've talked about realistic timelines, you know, obviously taking the time to explain complex things, a little bit about technology. So I think one of the biggest things for coaches, right? And I think this is something you can carry with you no matter what year you're in, is welcoming questions, feedback, constructive criticism, whatever you want to call it, right? I think so many coaches are afraid to get told they need to improve on something, right? And I think that, like, very early on, I think this is one of the things that got me ahead so fast, was I was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Someone tell me what I'm doing, right? Like, someone tell me or help me get better. And I was so open to the idea of learning from people I thought knew more than me that I absorbed so much information at such a fast rate, while also training at such a rapid rate, that it was something that just kind of clicked for me in my head as a coach, right? I think what happens a lot of times is when we talk about kind of even just like the medical industry, right? I think the medical industry, I think I was reading this, or I was reading this book. I don't know if I talked about this a couple weeks ago, but it was this medical book on COVID, and they were talking about the kind of like that. I don't know if it was like before or after the whole vaccination thing and the ivermectin thing. They were having like the back and forth with, and the person in the book was like, when you think of the medical industry, you think of the medical industry being like this super progressive, like always at the edge of like the forefront of studies and making things happen, blah blah blah. And realistically, the medical industry is driven by ego. It's a lot of people who paid a lot of money for information, who know the way, and they're not willing to change a lot of times, right? So what they think or what they thought is what they believe. And it's not saying about everybody, because that's obviously not the case for anything in the world. There's amazing doctors, there's amazing people in the health industry who are very knowledgeable and are progressive, but a large portion of them are people who are just stuck in their ways because they learned something they paid a lot of money for, right? Mm-hmm. And I think when we kind of dive into this, it's that type of thing that halts progress, right? Because if you think you know it all and you're not willing to listen, then what conversation can you actually have with someone to know that, like, all right, I'm actually getting the best service, right? Because if you just assume because it's worked for someone else that it's going to work for someone else, right? Then that's a disconnect right away, right? And I think we as coaches need to understand that, like, we've had this conversation before as well, like principles versus methods, because if we stick with methods, we're going to get lost, right? If we stick with principles, it doesn't really matter at what point or stage we're in, because what we have withstands the test of time, right? Anything to add to that?
No, it was good.
So I think, like, with that being said, you have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to try new ideas and concepts. You have to be open-minded. You have to be willing to kind of take feedback from somebody. When someone comes to you and is like, hey, I want to talk a little bit more about, your programming methodology. I think it could be better. It's not, hey, who the hell does this guy think he is, right? It's like, okay, well, like, what is it first, right? And then you can make the decision, right? If you know you have a program that works and it's bringing results and someone's like, hey, I think you could do something better, why would you not want to listen, at least at the bare minimum? Why would you not want to sit down and be like, hey, okay, well, like, maybe this guy has something for me? It doesn't mean you have to take it, right? And if it's not agreeing with you, you have the right to be like, hey, listen, I appreciate you. I respect you helping me, but, like, I'm just not interested, or I just don't agree and I'm not willing to change, right? Because I think this works and you have a reason, that's fine. But if it's just out of stubbornness because you're comfortable and you really don't want to, change how you're doing things, then that's a problem, right? And I think that's a problem that a lot of coaches fall into, is that they find this thing that works. They find this niche, or, whatever it might be, this method, and then they attach themselves to it, and then they get stuck. And if they get stuck, and someone criticizes them or gives them feedback, they don't take it, and then they end up isolating themselves. And then, this is kind of what the Coach Connect is all about. It's like, I want to bring those people together, because I think too many people in our industry are isolating themselves because, no one wants to listen or hear it from anybody else. They just want to kind of do their job, and that's it.
Yeah, that actually, I do have another piece to add to that, because it's more than just a willingness to try new concepts, a willingness to learn, and being open-minded. It's having the initiative to continue to learn, continue to try new concepts, and continue to reach out to people who know more than you. Because I've probably said this on the podcast before, it's one of my favorite sayings. Like, I'd rather be the dumbest smart person in the room than the smartest dumb person. Mm-hmm. Meaning, like, I'm trying to surround myself with people who know more than me, who are better than me at my craft, because you can continue to learn.
Yeah.
If you lock yourself in a room with people who don't know as much as you, and they praise you as their god of knowledge, and you truly know nothing, and it's just like, all these dumb people just think I'm smart, then you're going nowhere. You're not helping anybody. You're not even helping yourself.
So. Yeah. And I think, like, obviously, you want to put yourself in a position where you can succeed, right? And you want to find your group. But I also think that, like, you have to, like Jerry said, you have to, from time to time, put yourself in a room with people who are smarter than you, right? I think this is like a jiu-jitsu thing, right? This is very big in jiu-jitsu, where a lot of the times in training for jiu-jitsu, it's recommended that, yeah, you train with the higher belts, right? But that's like 20% of the time, right? You don't want to train with black belts and brown belts and high level grapplers all the time, because what happens is you end up just defending yourself and you don't ever advance position. You don't get to practice attacks. You don't get to work on an offensive game. You never work on sweeps. You never work on the really important stuff in jiu-jitsu, right? So how it should go is like about 20% of the time, 30% of the time, you roll with those high belts to work on those things, right? See how long you can last with some of these guys. See how long, maybe you can get a position of advantage. Maybe you can sweep. Maybe you don't get taken down this time, that type of thing. And then the other times you go with lower belt positions where you're respectful, right? But you're able to advance position. You're able to work on some attacks. You're able to kind of look at the game from the top down as opposed from the ground up, right? And it's a completely different game when you're on your back versus when you're on top, right? And I think that's one of the most important things in jiu-jitsu is like the moves are important, right? But you need to work them at full capacity. And if you work them at full capacity with someone who's too good, you're not going to be able to do it because they're going to either know what's coming or they're going to reverse you and you're never going to actually be able to like work on the move. So it's really important you have that time where you work with someone who's a lower level than you, that you can work on these moves and work through those progressions and work through that stuff, right? And I think like as a coach, we need to do that same thing, right? And I think that like Jerry said, you don't want to be the smartest dumb person in the room, right? But you want to give yourself an opportunity to learn from really smart people and then share that knowledge from time to time, right? And maybe dumb isn't the right word, but I think most of the time when we're in rooms, right, being as we're dedicated to our craft, we might be the smartest person in a lot of rooms in regards to fitness, right? But then you might start talking about a different subject and we're going to be idiots in that room about a certain subject, right? But I think it's just once you get to a certain point, it's a responsibility of like, we are going to be some of the smarter people as trainers and as people who dedicate our life to training. We're going to be the smartest person in a room full of dumb people sometimes, but we also have to seek out being the dumb person in a room full of smart people, right? And we have to seek that out as much as we can. And we have to make sure that we're pushing ourselves to challenge those thoughts, because that's how we're going to improve as trainers. And again, this is something that doesn't matter if AI is taking over or not. Like this is just us as individuals working on the things that we need to work on to be better humans, which then can translate into becoming a better coach.
Yep.
Anything to add to that?
Perfect way to round that off.
You're smiling, so I wasn't sure if you were trying to say something else.
No, I was just thinking like I'm always the smartest dumb person in a room when I'm in a room with Brandon, but I held back.
Why didn't you say it? Because it's not true.
I held back because I'm being respectful.
Did you see his stupid hat? His hat has the big.
What the F is that? It's a fedora with safari flaps on the back.
And he always has two dice in his pocket.
I think he has dice in his pocket, but he's afraid to show them to people. Reaches in pocket, just tosses them on the floor.
So stupid. The last thing
I think you should leave.
I think you should leave. Yes.
That's
the last thing I want to talk about is programming, right? And I think that programming, again, it's an important thing, but I think the most important thing within programming is obviously having well thought out progressions, right? And I think this is something that, again, AI can't do. I may be wrong. So
it struggles a little bit.
It will struggle with this.
It can put together some rep schemes, but as far as bringing someone from baseline up or down.
Well, I think it's also like ChatGPT is never going to be able to see, as of right now, I should say. I should watch my words because it's probably listening to me right now. But it's not going to be able to see the little details that we see as trainers, right? So it might, in theory, just like fitness, a lot of things in theory make a lot of sense, but in practice don't. Having well thought out progressions, knowing what makes sense for the person in front of you and giving them the progression that makes sense. Not just like, okay, well, here's what the data says. It's like, okay, here's what the data says, but then like, they're not reaching depth, or, they don't have the shoulder mobility, or it hurts, right? These types of things are progression, or things to take into consideration for progression that allow us to actually give someone something that they can utilize, take advantage of, and actually, get the most out of inside of a training session or a workout, right? And then I think on top of that, the last thing is just clear and direct programming, right? When you write a program, have it be clear, have it be direct. Let the people know what they're doing, why they're doing, and when they're doing it, and how they're doing it, right? How many sets, how many reps, how much tempo, how much rest, what's supposed to be the movement? Is it a variation? Where does this kind of relate in regards to the weight? How much, how much of the movement have we done before? Is this a progression on something we've done in the past? Is it brand new? If it's brand new, what are the things to watch out for? What are the little tweaks and things that you need to take account for, which again is a lot harder online, right? If you're an online coach, it's a lot harder to kind of explain that stuff, and then on top of that, continue to watch over it when you're not there, right? But there's still really important things that we need to work on. And I think like as a coach, all of these things, right? It doesn't matter if AI takes over tomorrow, because we still need these skills to make sure we're going to be great coaches, right? And I think one of the other things we wrote, actually, is there anything you want to add to the
Yeah, I
programming
was going to
side?
say one thing to remember with AI, no matter what, is it's just Googling things for you quickly.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing we've talked about on this podcast, it's the amount of false information that's on the internet. I've asked ChatGPT things for things that I'm not an expert in, but I knew that it was like, I don't remember what it was, but I asked something about,
Am I smarter than Brandon? And I said,
yeah,
yeah.
and it was like,
That's
well,
it, yeah.
obviously, and I was like, well, clearly that's false because he's handsome, smart, tall, muscular.
You're taller
smells
than me, though.
great. Yeah, I don't know if I am.
I think you
We're
are.
about the same height. I say 5'11". I'm 5'10".
Find out in 2 weeks when I see big.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah.
Dude, you're gonna get these arms wrapped around you like a freaking python. I'm gonna hug you so hard.
We're gonna.
But either way,
we'll have to see if we can do it.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're gonna be able to do the podcast in person there. You think we could?
no, I don't have any of my equipment.
Yeah, but I
do
could
like
bring
a-
mine.
We could do like a crappy, we could do a one mic thing. Where we get real close, like we're singing in the 70s.
We could do our
Guitar.
play. We could play catch on the couch.
Oh, that'd be great. But either way, I asked something that I know I'm not an expert in, but I knew that the information it gave me sounded weird, so I Googled that, and it turns out it was a myth. So, like, it's just Googling things very quickly and pulling from multiple resources and creating an average answer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to keep in mind, too. Like, no matter how good AI gets, there's still going to be some false stuff out there, because more and more recently I'm seeing false things in Reels and Shorts and on TikTok, and
I think it's just
a
clickbait
mess.
though.
What the
Like people saying the wrong stuff, and
people?
I don't know. Maybe I'm
no,
wrong.
man.
but-
Like, there's a lot of like I don't know. I can go into it forever with nutrition stuff, but there's a lot in nutrition, like the whole seed oil scare,
Yeah.
or like there's no actual data that seed oils are bad for you, and it's actually a really good alternative to a lot of other things. Like I've watched so many science experts talk about it. They're like, I don't know where the hell this started, but let's get that over with. So like little things like that.
Mhm.
Like people just hear one thing and then ChatGPT pulls it. But either way, we'll go on.
So, I think, I mean that's. Oops! Almost dropped this light. Sorry. I think that's it for me. I think that's, to me, like these are some very good aspects of, like, if you want to be a great coach in 2025 and beyond, if you can take these aspects and kind of continue them and continue to progress them and understand them and learn them and feel them, right? Like, it doesn't matter what's going on in the world. It doesn't matter who's where, what, when, why, whatever it might be. You're going to be at the top of your game because you have all these skills on top of it. And then on top of that, if you can learn to utilize AI to make your life easier as a coach, or even to understand fitness more, right? Then that's going to make your life even easier, right? Like, one of my favorite tools in the I don't really use it as much just because I don't really like the progressions all the time. But Coach RX has like a bot, like an RX bot that can kind of like write workouts for you. And I think that, like, one of the things I like about it is it can give me ideas if I ever get stagnant, but I also just, it's something that it's like, okay, cool, this could be a next progression, right? I don't really use it as a fact of like, write a workout for me, because, like, again, I don't like the idea of that right now. But I think that, like, it's something where it's like, all right, I'm stuck. I need an idea. What could I do? Like, it's a great, thing to kind of get the brain moving out of a little bit of a funk, especially when you're writing, 30, 40 programs a week. It's like, all right, I need to find something that gives me what I need and, just gives me a little bit of a brain fog, like gets out of the brain fog type thing, you
Yeah,
know?
sometimes I'll literally text you and be like, "Yo, give me a single leg squat movement," like, and you'll be like this, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's a great one."
Yeah. So
It's a good
it's
tool for
little
that.
things like that. But like I think if you're able to use technology to help yourself and provide a better experience for your clients, you know, and you do all the rest of the stuff we talked about today, I just don't see a way in which you'll fall behind, and I also don't see a way in which you'll not succeed inside the coaching industry as a whole.
hmm
So,
Yeah.
anything to add to that?
I think just again continuing to have the initiative to grow, challenge yourself. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to admit that you don't know everything,
Mm-hmm.
because the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
Exactly.
And just be a student of the craft. Everything
Yes,
that you
sir.
practice and try to get other people to do, you do yourself.
Yes, sir. I love it. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Again, today is episode 2 of the new season of the BG Perform podcast. Give us your feedback. Let us know how the audio sounds, how the camera angle is, all that stuff. Please let me know. Tell me it's good audio.
Tell me it's so good.
Tell me it's the
please.
best audio you've ever heard. So this $350 mic makes me feel better. But yeah, so let us know. We got about 6 more episodes left in this season, I believe, 6 or 7 more episodes. And yeah, so we're looking forward to it. Looking forward to continuing on the journey of the new season. But yeah, we will see you guys soon. Again, follow us on Instagram at BGPerform_ and at Coach Jerry Hayes. And we will see you guys next time. Peace.